It's gone now.
Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Daily Gooner Pod, here now on StreamYard on multiple platforms. Joining you from the United States, I am Raphael, joined by my usual UK cohort. To my left on your screen is Sam. Welcome, Sam.
Hello, mate. How are you?
And I'm well. I, we'll get into the heartburn in a moment, but barring some minor technical difficulties, we're expecting to be joined by our buddy Ryan, who you see in a dark spot to my right on your screen. But as technology allows, we'll get in. But let's jump in. Some active news, lots of active news, lots of rumors, lots of moves affecting Arsenal Football Club. Some is ongoing. The Bruno Guimaraes saga is unfolding. Is he going to Newcastle? Is Arsenal really going to pass on this gentleman? We'll get to that in a moment. We'll talk about ingoings, outgoings. There he is. We'll talk about Xhaka. We'll talk about Aubameyang, who apparently is not going to go with the club. But we'll talk about Leno. We'll talk about the striker situation. Vhalovic now is pretty much all but signed, sealed, and delivered to Juve. What does that mean for Arsenal in the striker sweepstakes? But let's begin. Let's go back about 18 hours to last night, where video emerged from a Colorado Avalanche game. As you know, Colorado Avalanche is a National Hockey League franchise owned by KSE. It's Stan Kroenke's hockey club. And there in the box with Stan was one Mikel Arteta, who had flown all the way from London to Denver, Colorado, presumably to talk about various matters. First off, his contract extension. Ryan, I'm going to begin with you. Welcome. Well, first off, welcome back. And I guess I don't think he was just there to talk contract extension. Let's begin with that. Can you hear me, Ryan? All right. Well, Sam, why don't you jump in and take that? I mean, obviously, the contract extension for Mikel is on the table, something that's been rumored. They want to lock him down, keep the project going, but that had to be just a piece of that discussion. Had to.
Yeah. Obviously, if you're going to meet the owners, I think it's a case of strategizing and getting what you need over the line. It's a difficult one because ultimately, within that clip, it was a 3-4 second
just 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah. So for me, if he's over there to go over the legalities of the contract extension, I would have expected that to happen. I would have expected that to happen in England, to be perfectly honest. But if Arteta's there with Stan, and one can only assume Josh being there as well, because they would move as a partnership from the KSE
correct
franchise, and as it's been reported that Josh is the one that's heading Arsenal over this side of the pond. So for me, I think it would be it'll be a discussion as to what do you need, how much do you need, who do you want, how quickly do you need it, and what are we doing. So if that is the case, then hopefully we should start to see some movement. But it's something that's needed desperately right now, because it's been bad news after bad news for Arsenal over the last couple of days.
Right, and let's put it in the broader context, because they had to. I agree with you. They had to be discussing the direction, the remainder of this window for Arsenal. And it comes at a perfect time. I think if Mikel Arteta is going to walk into a meeting with the owners in the box, he could not have picked a better time. Things are going very, very well for KSE and all their other franchises. I mean, the Avalanche, whose game they were watching, have the best record in the National Hockey League. They're one of the favorites to win the Stanley Cup. They were in it last year, and actually for the last 2 years. They're a powerful club. Of the day before, Sunday, KSE's Rams, Stan's Los Angeles Rams, upset Tampa Bay. in the divisional playoffs in the NFL and have given themselves a home playoff game this Sunday against San Francisco. And if they win that, they advance to the Super Bowl. The championship, which will be played in their home stadium of SoFi Stadium. So this is from a Rams perspective, from a KSE perspective, you could not have written a better script for KSE as an organization. And something I was pointing out to you and to Ryan and everybody else in our private chat group, that game Sunday was not expected. It was not scheduled. The Rams are, I think, the 4th seed going into the playoffs. So suddenly, because teams above them were upset, the Rams are hosting this game. It's a free game, a free playoff game where tickets are going to be sold at a premium. And this is going to be tens of millions of dollars. I would say north of 50 million, maybe closer to $100 million in revenue, in gate revenue that the Rams are realizing that they did not expect. So when you're in the market and you're Mikel Arteta and you walk in the day after Stan Kroenke found, let's say hypothetically, I'll pull $80 million on the ground the day before, you think that they would give him what he wanted. And given that everybody else is succeeding, why not? This is their second most valuable franchise after the Rams is Arsenal Football Club. So let's see the ramifications of that. Let's go into the market. Let's start with the older move. We know when we were talking here last week, Arsenal was after Dusan Vlahovic, the Fiorentina striker. But in the last 24 hours, we know going back a week, we know they had made a massive offer. The biggest offer that Fiorentina saw tabled was from Arsenal. And this just looks like a replay of the saga that we saw in the summer with Locatelli, the midfielder, where Arsenal pursued him. He was their top target. But, we're seeing with Vlahovic something very similar, a player who's playing in Italy, who wants to stay in Italy. And ultimately, that was the tipping decision. Seems like he and his agent held out because they were waiting on Juve. And Juve somehow, we're not going to get into the economics of Juve's business, but somehow they found the money to pay something comparable to what Arsenal was offering, and so he has chosen to stay there. Now, we talked about this with Locatelli. Let's talk about this now, because a lot of fans jump on Arsenal and say, well, this is a lack of ambition. Why are they going after a player who wasn't their first choice? And we look at this, we talked about this in the summer. To my mind, I'm fine with them up to a point as long as they don't take themselves up to the deadline doing this, because Vlahovic should have been their top target.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's Arsenal. Realistically, if we look at it online, Arsenal are damned if they do, they're damned if they don't, because ultimately we're trying to show ambition by going after one of the hottest strikers of his age bracket, and he's been talked in brackets of Cristiano Ronaldo, Erling Haaland, Mbappe, and things like that. So, as an Arsenal fan, of course, you're going to want Arsenal to pursue Vhalovic, but ultimately, we knew there was issues with his agent. There was rumours that he had a pre-agreement with Juventus. From my understanding of that's illegal in today's day and age in terms of having that pre-contract agreement with another club, considering that they're in the same league. But ultimately, it's coming to fruition that Juventus have somehow found the money. Although that as you say, that they were what 210 million in the red last year.
Right, and from Fiorentina's perspective, this is the second striker that Juventus have just walked in and pried off their roster in the most cruel fashion. And you think, from Fiorentina's perspective, like, where you look like a doormat for Juventus, at least to those of us outside of Italy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chiesa was the other one that went from Fiorentina to Juventus, and that was on a dodgy loan, 2-year loan deal with I don't even think that Fiorentina have actually been paid for that yet. So again, that's another deal that they've got to find some money for.
Locatelli's on deferred money from Sassuolo, and yeah.
And then that's not even to add into the equation of Juventus being investigated by FIFA and UEFA for dodgy books. So I'm just a bit baffled about how they've located this money. I think that um they've probably hedged their bets with that 400 million euro cash injection, but I can't see FIFA allowing that. Well, I can't see them allowing it. It's that's what they're using, but I think that's going to come around and bite them on the bum, when the investigation comes to the conclusion, because it's just another way of getting around fair play, and I don't think that that's going to stand. But ultimately, it'll be too late because he'll be a Juventus player, and what can you do from there, really?
Well, okay, so let's move to Plan B. Arsenal, still have roughly a week to find a striker that's priority one. We will talk about the midfielder in a moment, but we've all known that with Aubameyang's game just falling like a bad souffle this year, that Lacazette's got one foot out the door, and Ketia seems like his eyes are roaming everywhere. Balogun's on loan. This club really doesn't have a striker, and has played this month where they just kind of plateaued or really fizzled, pick your metaphor, but they need a striker, and we all know they need a striker. So again, at a certain point, yesterday was the drop dead date on Vhalovic. Where do you go next? Rumors this morning that they're looking at Isak from the Swedish striker who's in La Liga. Some rumors that they were going to get a Real Madrid striker on loan. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is back in the discussion. Pros and cons of all of them. And is there a name? I know that you threw the name Ollie Watkins out in one of our chats. Is there a dark horse that we might look for in these last few days?
Yeah, from my point of view, I think that Isak would be the one that I'd like to see come in. I know that would be the most expensive of the lot, but ultimately you're paying for his potential, and if Arteta can work his magic with a younger player, he's got that arrogance about him that we saw with a certain young Frenchman coming from Juve all them years ago. So I think that he's got the same arrogance, the same type of technique. It's just a case of how can he adapt. He's also got a close friend in Martin Odegaard here. So them two used to
True.
play when Odegaard went to Sociedad. So they've already got that telepathy on the field, so to speak. Um, I think if we're not able to go for him, or he doesn't want to move mid-season, then I'd try for Ollie Watkins from Aston Villa, because they've got Danny Ings. Watkins is playing, but he's usually the one that gets hooked. So I don't know.
He's a known Arsenal admirer, is he not?
Yeah, he's an Arsenal fan. He's openly come out and said that he's an Arsenal fan. So I think if we were to push for him, I think that he might push from his side. But we know what Aston Villa are like, and they're notorious with transfer dealings in terms of trying to sell high and low ball, like they tried with Emil Smith Rowe in the summer. But I don't know. But for me, I think ultimately, if we're looking at it in a realistic prospect, then probably Calvert-Lewin's going to be the one to come in.
Pros and cons of him. I mean, he's big, he's aggressive. When he's on, he's lethal. But, and that's a big but.
How often is that?
Well, and he's had some health issues, has he not?
Yeah. So this obviously he's back now. His broken toe took him 2.5 months to come back from. And I'm sorry, that's for me, that's a red flag right there, because ultimately, if you're looking at broken toes, you're looking about 3 weeks to a month's top to come back from. So if he's taking 2 months to come back from that, then I think there's some serious issues within him as a person. But ultimately, if it is to be him, I've got my reservations about him, because I think that he's very much a purple patch player. I don't believe he is the player that's going to put us onto the next level. And Arsenal and Arteta are saying we want significant signings to take us to that next level and upgrade us.
Right.
Do I think
not just a name, as so many fans want, just a name to put in there.
Yeah. Do I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin is that guy? Personally, I don't. I think that he is just an equivalent to Lacazette, albeit he's he's got less in terms of build up, but more in terms of aerial 6 yard presence. So it'll be a trade off as to what you want from the striker within the system, because with Lacazette he will drop deep, but then he can't get into the box. Whereas Calvert
Mhm.
Lewin, you're missing some of the build up and some of the link up play for his aerial ability and his presence in the box. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but for me, there's just his underlying metrics isn't what would suit our system. Now, I think Arteta will probably think that he can improve him in certain scenarios, but not all players can be improved on that. And with him being 24 now, he's probably going to be pretty set in his ways. So I don't think that he's the player to kick Arsenal on to the next level.
So who's the closest in your book? You're looking at Vhalovic profile. He's 6'3", he's 21. He checked all the boxes: age, height, aerial presence, finishing ability. I mean, he's the close of this group. He's the most polished by far. Can play with his back to the goal. I mean, it seems that Arteta has pieces of that profile, that one player, that Dusan kind of gave him everything. But as you said, Lacazette doesn't have a major presence. He's small. We saw it in this match where in the 0-0 that we haven't even discussed yet on the weekend against Burnley, where crosses were being fed into the box and there was just nobody there to get on the end of them. He was being crowded out. He was being smothered by Burnley's defenders, and he just didn't have the physical presence. He didn't have the height, the leaping ability to make himself a presence, to get to those crosses. He was very easily kind of broken out. On the other hand, he's excellent in pressing, something Mikel really wants. As you said, when they need some help, he can drop deeper and help start the attack. But then it means there's nobody there in the box to finish it. Who of these names that we've discussed, taking Vlahovic off the table now, who's the closest to that, to giving him what he wants?
It's difficult because they've all got pros and cons that are all mix and match.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it depends what you want, because if you want a striker that can potentially get you to the next level and beyond, that's going to be Isaac. If you want a player that you think can progress but not to the highest elite level, then it's Watkins. Or if you want a player that's giving you aerial ability and some presence in the box, it's probably going to be Calvert-Lewin. So from a personal point of view, I think Isaac will be the one that can do everything. But it depends, and it comes down to how much the club wants him in now. If he is the one to realistically go all the way through, and if they want to essentially go down the potential route, because we've got a lot of young players, but we need goals now. And if
Right.
you're looking at the options that are there, are you going to get goals now? You probably hedge your bets on Calvert-Lewin being the one to supply that. But even still, that's not good enough for me personally, because you're missing out on a lot. So if you're taking away the link up play, I think that a lot of our plays break down around him, because it's how Lacazette sometimes is perceived, and the ball will go into him and it'll just bounce off. It's exactly the same thing as Calvert-Lewin. So do we want to upgrade on that? I think that we should. Do we need to change the system if Calvert-Lewin comes in? I think we probably will. Do I think the team should be geared around Calvert-Lewin? No. But
Given that they've been very stubborn in long-term profile, sticking to that long-term profile, I have to agree with you. I have to think Isak is the guy. But Sociedad have made it known. I was reading a story in the Spanish press yesterday. It's for them. It's trigger the transfer, trigger the transfer fee, or you wait. And that transfer fee is somewhere north of 70 million pounds. It's not going to be cheap.
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think that they would miss out on £70 million. I think that realistically, we've got. Let me put it into context. We've got, if you're going to go and do the release clause, it needs, you don't go to the club, you go to the La Liga headquarters. You put the money, well, you give the money to the players' lawyers. The players' lawyer goes to the headquarters, says this club is activating the release clause. There's the money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out of contract. I've essentially bought myself out of the contract with Real Sociedad, and I'm signing my registration with Arsenal Football Club. That's what happens
Thomas
in terms.
Partey move. Right.
Yeah, that's what happens in Spain in terms of that. In terms of how can you get round that, I believe that you would still bid the release clause amount, but you'd do it in installments. So not necessarily having to go to the La Liga headquarters, or if you bid just under, say for example, so you're just under the release clause, and then you go, okay, that's in installments. So then you work with the club to set how many installments over X amount of months. So if that can be worked out and the legality of that can be worked out, then I think that Isaac could possibly be the one. But it purely depends on Sociedad and whether they want it in one hit, or whether they can offset it over the number of years, like all deals are. But it's a difficult one to say at the moment.
All right. We're gonna kind of wrung that grape of all this juice. Let's move to another position. Again, it came up. It's Arsenal needs a midfielder. Although there's been some debate, that with Xhaka and Partey coming back from the red cards, that the next time Arsenal plays, they're going to be as close to full in midfield as they were when they played City so well, when they were able to put a Xhaka and Partey duo in that midfield, and that really worked well. I mean, we didn't really talk about that much, but that was probably Thomas Partey's best 90 minutes in an Arsenal uniform, and he really seemed to kind of, it clicked for him, and he was decisive, and he was, moving the ball forward on his feet, and not passing the ball backwards, and beating men, and pushing the attack forward in that first half, where Arsenal, let's call it, they dominated City. And everything seemed to be all set up for the next step. And then here comes AFCON, and off he goes, and then he comes back, and we get him for 10 minutes, and he gets 2 yellow cards, so he misses the Burnley match. And that may have cost Arsenal 2 points. Is getting a midfielder at this point a necessity of Xhaka and Partey coming back, or is this just something that the fan base needs and the team needs? Let's talk about the team needs this too, from a psychological perspective, to say, hey, they're backing us. They want to help us go forward and get that top 4 position.
I think that is a necessity. I think the striker's the bigger necessity, because that's the final piece that's letting us down, putting the ball into the net. But ultimately, I think that with the midfield, we need to get somebody in that's going to face Xhaka out, because we can't keep running the risk of, what if he gets a red card? What if he does something stupid? Is the referee going to be on his case today? Can't keep running that risk, unfortunately. He's an experienced, useful player, but he's saying that he can't play how he wants to play. And for me, that when a player's saying that, you always know you're running a risk with them. And ultimately, if you look at the way that the table is poised, we've still got top 4 in our own hands. We're not reliant on other teams as it stands right now. So it's difficult, because we will be stacked with midfielders, because also you got to then think that El Neni's coming back. So unless we're gonna do a few deals out in centre mid as well, it wouldn't be my highest priority. But if you're potentially going to be losing out on somebody like Bruno Guimaraes to Newcastle, of all bloody people, then
Unbelievable.
You know what the price is. You know roughly about what the wages will be. You've been tracking him for 2 years, 2 years plus even when he was back in Brazil. So if he's that player that you've been tracking for that long, do you really miss out to him to Newcastle when the price is set? It's madness, and I don't want to get carried away in negativity, but I think that then speaks a lot around the director of football. It's too nice. It doesn't strike me as somebody who is decisive. Obviously, we had a good summer. Edu had a good summer, but as we've spoken about beforehand, there has been deals where he's not been so well.
Hmm.
And is it going to be a return to this? I don't know. There's still time left, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But if he leaves us in a hole, because ultimately it comes down to his decision as to sign, like getting the sign offs and whatnot. If he leaves us in a hole, that then insure basically ensures we miss out on top four or even top five, because that's what Europa League as well. Then, for me personally, time to go for him.
Mm. And we'll see. I mean, I think he knows that. I mean, we didn't talk about his presence in the box, but here's an opportunity that this club didn't expect, but they've got this opportunity, and not only just top four. I mean, Chelsea's wobbling. We've talked about this certainly before Burnley. We don't want to get our heads out of kind of in the clouds, but it seems third place is up for grabs too. And if somehow you snag that, then you don't have to go through that early qualifying in Champions League. You're kind of set. That's nobody expected that. But the league is a strange beast, and teams go up and teams go down. And I want to throw another name that came that's come out in the press. I was just looking at it while you were talking. A name that's been kicked around. We talk about it. Bruno's not on there. Who's on there? We talked about Arthur. Obviously, that's a name that they've been linked to from Juve. And will the Juve's dealings with Vhalovic have anything to do with their dealings with Arsenal about letting Arthur go? It seems Arthur wants to come to Arsenal, more playing time. Douglas Luiz, who is at Villa, is another name that's come up, but Ruben Neves is back on the radar. And Arsenal tracked him in the summer. He's the most prem ready, would not need to adapt to the league. But we look at the table, and lo and behold, Wolves are only 2 points behind Arsenal in the table, so that might not be an easy deal or an easy target to pursue.
Yeah, I think I saw that Wolves are going in for another central midfielder this window. I can't remember the name, but that was only a couple of days ago, and then all of a sudden the news is coming out that Ruben Neves is back on our radar. So just putting two and two together, that could be a firm possibility. Sorry, but for me, if we're looking at Ruben Neves, I think that's a no-brainer, really, if you think about it, because he's got the range of passing that Xhaka's got. He's got that box-to-box ability, and he's good in the challenge, and he's a leader. And that's some people that we need around this club right now as leaders.
And let's say it. We talked about this when Xhaka was kept. It looked like he had 1 foot out in Roma. And then he comes back, and we all crossed our fingers and said, is Xhaka going to be, we're going to get the restrained Xhaka, or we're going to get the red card Xhaka? The red cards, if anything, have increased in the limited time we've had him this year. It's not going away. You're not going to rinse it out, give him a bath and rinse the red cards out of him. That's who he is.
Yeah, I think that's a different story for a different day, though, because I think that he's too tainted with the league's referees, and as there's been so much flying around saying that, oh, it's Xhaka, the referee can't wait to get the red card out of his pocket. They've got that preconceived notion, and he even admitted it himself, saying that the referee told one of the teammates, "Oh, Shaka's lost his head," when he hadn't, and he sent him off. And it's like, you can't have that bias against players, but ultimately, again, it's something that you can't continue with. If the player's tainted, then you're essentially just wasting your time.
Right. And again, there's a market for him. Roma wants him.
Mm.
I think he would go play for Mourinho if he could. It's kind of strange because there's Ainsley Maitland-Niles, and of course, I don't want to revisit the whole Tammy Abraham saga because that makes me very mad. I mean, for all of the discussion of a striker, that's a guy Arsenal misses. It seems like on a week-to-week basis, not bringing him in and adding him to that wonderful crop of players they had in the summer. But looking at the schedule, I mean, they have a break. They're going to Dubai. They're going to have like a summer camp. They don't play again until February the 10th. So 2.5 weeks, a chance to get their legs back, a chance. We heard Tomiyasu. We haven't talked about him, that he could be out for a while, but this is a long time for him to heal. Before we move on to that next match, do we need to talk about right back at this point? Have you heard anything about Tomiyasu's injury? I did hear a few weeks, but then looking at the big break, I don't know what that means in terms of games lost, if any. But if he is going to miss a significant amount of time, I guess they could use Ben White out there, which they have been doing, and he gives them that flexibility. But again, then you put Rob Holding in the middle, and
Yeah.
you gain one place and you lose somewhere else.
Yeah, I think with Tommy, obviously, as we said on the pod last week, got to give him the props of coming back, not fully fit at all, playing in the game the other day, when he knew that we had no other options there, and he tried his best, but it was what it was. But I think realistically, right back again, it's another position where we've got players that can play there, but not having your first choice in Tommy, it heavily cripples the team because realistically at right back you need the specialised, and if you want specialised after Tomiyasu, then it's probably going to be Cedric, and the less minutes that he gets is probably the better.
That's a big step down, yeah. And that's a topic for another show. But the summer, it's clearly the summer window is all going to be about building behind that starting 11. And right now, it's like, let's finish the starting 11. Let's get the striker in, the priority striker to finish the top 11, because the top 11 isn't done. There is no striker right now who you can say that's our future, that's our guy. But again, what I was going to say though is that we just talked about Ruben Neves. When Arsenal comes back and takes the pitch again on February 10th, they're playing Wolves at the Molineux. And so that adds some intrigue to a possible move for Ruben Neves. Is Wolves going to let him go right when they're, he could be walking over and coming right back against them in the very first match after the window closes?
Do you know what it is? I think if an offer's good enough for Wolves are one of these teams that will take the money and they will reinvest it in that squad, because ultimately they know that they've got that Portuguese connection, but they can't hold on to their top players. And if they are able to sell top player, get a quality replacement in, and still have some money left over for the summer, I think they'd snatch that with both hands. But ultimately, it's coming down to the bare bones of days. So it's going to be a bit of a mad rush, and we've got to remember as Arsenal fans that there's going to be reports flying out here, there, and everywhere. And from a content point of view,
there already are. They already are.
It's a person's dream, but if you want sensible Arsenal news, then you've got to read between the lines with reports, because you can get very swept up in it.
So, just saw it posted. I have to see where the source of this is, but a rumor that Newcastle are willing to give Bruno $200K a week, and that's why he's so eager to join. That's rich. That's awfully rich for Arsenal's blood. That's not something we say Arsenal don't get outbid, but again, when you have a club like Newcastle that's got money to burn and is desperate to stay up, you might see more deals like that. That was the early. We're seeing a repeat of the early days of, say, City when they were bought by.
Well, not even that.
the
Early
Qataris.
days of Chelsea, early Chelsea
Same,
days,
right, right.
and it's this is the thing that annoys me because you know you've got clubs that will just use scatterguns like Newcastle, for example, and you know they're cash rich, so they'll be able to blow you out the water in terms of wages. So then you're pinning your hopes on the player to say, okay, Newcastle come in for me and Arsenal come in for me. Newcastle can be a big project, or Arsenal can be the project to get back into the Champions League. So then you're essentially coming down to the players' aspirations and whether they want to get cash rich quickly and then realistically give Newcastle 4 years of their life and then go into a basically a semi retirement league, or you
Right.
play for Arsenal still on a good wage and try and get them into the top four and continue and try and compete for trophies. But a lot of it boils down to aspirations, and with some players from South America, money rules over aspirations.
Sure. But you bring up a very interesting scenario because Newcastle are in the relegation zone right now. And let's
Hmm.
say they give Bruno 200K a week. And let's say they don't stay up. Who's going to take him on that wage? I mean, he might be available, but no club's going to want to take him at that wage. There are some clubs that could afford him, certainly, but he's kind of marooning himself in Newcastle if
Oh,
he takes the
100%.
money.
Yeah, 100%. I think in terms of if they were he would take the money and go to Newcastle and they got relegated, I'm pretty certain there'd be a relegation release clause in his contract somewhere.
Mm.
And if that is the case, then he's got 6 months of very good money, and it would be a bump his wage up. But if he's smart, is he gonna want to go and play Luton away, Stoke away, rainy nights at Stoke? Do you know? So if he's smart, it bump his wages down probably to about 150, 120, 150, and then it's down to clubs whether they want to pay that. But ultimately, it's how if this scenario plays out, is how clubs perceive him adapting to the Premier League and whether it's worth it.
But we've seen this before. I mean, we saw this with Adebayor when he went to City, and who knows with Bruno? We don't know. Does he have an entourage? Does he have an agent? These are young. We forget how young these guys are, and they
Yeah,
get bad advice very, very often. And sometimes it just throws their careers way off track. So seems
yeah,
good in the short term, but
yeah, and we can all point at players because there's been plenty of them. You only have to look at Sami Nasri for one.
mhm.
He was a player that could have gone on and been absolutely brilliant, and then his career just tailed off, and he's in. I don't even know where he is anymore, to be perfectly honest, or if he's still playing. But he didn't do anything of note, and it's a shame because you got this great talent, and then what happens with it? Nothing. Like it's a
He was on
waste.
the bench at City very
Yeah,
quickly too. Yeah.
yeah, and you got to think like Dembele at Barcelona. He's really trying to string Barcelona along for a higher wage. So whether or not he gets it there, I doubt it. And if they're looking to sell him, if is he going to go to Newcastle? Probably. He's probably going to enjoy the nightlife there a bit too much. So that'll be another one down the pan, so to speak, because his entourage around him is dreadful. To be perfectly honest.
Now, I'm going to throw a name out at you. We haven't talked about it on this show in a long time because he's disappeared. Um, but he just came back from AFCON. Is Nico Pepe a player who could bring Arsenal some money as an outgoing in this little time that's remaining? We haven't heard anything about him. Obviously, he's in. Mikel Arteta seems doesn't want to risk injury to him because he sees that he has value. He's on a high wage, but his value to Arsenal is minimal at this point. He hasn't started. I mean, he's played in some of the cup matches, but even then, it seems the manager's very, very reluctant to give him anything more than 15 minutes a match.
Yeah, see, Pepe is a difficult one because he's a sellable asset, but we need him to play and have some good minutes to essentially rack up the transfer fee. But um,
Well,
you know,
and
with
also the minutes that say Saka's been racking up recently are heavy. We saw
yeah,
Smith Rowe. These kids are having to carry a heavy load, and Nico Pepe, for better or for worse, is still has his talent, as you said.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think it's again, it's difficult, and that's the difficulty of a transfer window, isn't it? And squad management. You're trying to see what you're able to do to optimize the squad. But on the flip side of that, you've also got to realize that you can't sell everybody or get rid of everybody that aren't getting minutes because you're going to need them one strip down the line, and then you know Saka does need the rest, and we're very lucky that this 2.5 week break has come in now because I think that will give him reinvigorated energy to attack the rest of the season. But there will be sometimes where you need a Nicolas Pepe to give you something a bit different. Um, but realistically, it's difficult from an Arsenal point of view because you're probably going to make a loss on him regardless of what happens.
Well, let me throw something at you. I mean, we haven't really heard. There were some names that came up, or one name it slips my mind. You might remember from Italy 2-3 weeks ago as being a winger target for Arsenal. Might this be a case where Arsenal could just do a straight swap for somebody that they really want going forward on the wing and send Nico Pepe the other way?
Yeah, there's a possibility, but again, it's there's a lot of moving parts in spot deals. Is whether the other club wants him, whether we want to deal with that club. Do they want to pay his wages? Do they want us to pay a
Mm-hmm.
fraction of them? What's the signing on bonuses? Both players going either way. Is there going to be any money involved? If so, how much? Yeah, it's not easy to do a straight swap deal, to be perfectly honest. But and realistically, you've got to look at it in the world of transfers. How many of them have actually happened recently?
Not many. You're right. You're right. You bring an excellent point. That's not a common thing. All right. Injury time for the pod. Clock is winding down. We know Arsenal needs two players. Arsenal, but more than anything else, needs a striker. They have to pull the trigger at some point. They must have an internal drop dead date. Say, okay, these are our names, these are our targets, and if we get to say Monday, we got to move, or Sunday, or Friday, we've got to move. What do you anticipate happening, and who do you anticipate coming? Are they going to settle for a loan? It looked like they might be getting Jovic from Real Madrid. Stories today that Madrid is not going to let him go. You think that's just gamesmanship on Real's point?
No, because of Benzema's injury.
Okay.
So I think that's worse than what they first feared. Um, so I think they're just going to keep him back as a precaution. Well, as a precaution. But ultimately, from what I would personally like to see, I'd like Isaac to come in. Probably unlikely, but I'd like him to come in, and I'd like us to see Grameres or Neves come in. But
Hmm.
I I I honestly think that we need even just as fans, just for a bit of hope, we need some positives to
Mm-hmm.
come out in the media because we've been basically a punching bag
Battered,
this
yes.
month. So
Arsenal
like
is always a whipping target, and is just the incoming is just increasing seemingly with every day that Arsenal doesn't complete a move. So
yeah,
I'm going to
if
take some solace in the fact that they flew the manager over. I'm assuming that you went with him, that they were all in one place last night. This is being planned. They must have names. They must have a blueprint. I can't believe they're going to do all of this and then do nothing
well,
other than sign Mikel to an extension. I mean, that's possible. We've seen
mm,
it before, but given all the fortune, the good fortune of everything else in the KSE world, and given the opportunity that's sitting right now in front of Arsenal Football Club, I just can't see them letting it pass.
No, I don't either. But I don't think that we're going to bring bodies in just for the sake of bringing bodies in. I generally
You think
believe.
but you think they'll do it on loan? Maybe
Mm,
that's the compromise.
depends really. It depends how suitable the quality is there. But one thing
Hmm.
that I will mention that it's been reported that Garlic and Edo have stayed in England, so I highly doubt that they've gone over to America with
Okay.
Arteta.
Well, then they're working
So
the phones. We all hope, right?
yeah,
So
yeah. So I think that with them being in England, obviously the time frames between the US and England, they're needed more here, given the
yeah, they
constraints
need
of
to
what
be in
we've got.
tune. They need to be in sync with the clubs that they're dealing with here in Europe. So it makes no sense for them to go. I mean, Colorado's like 7 hours behind London, so
Mm.
um, just an unnecessary impediment at this time of the window. So I agree with you there. All right, we just we just we just pray, we
Yeah.
just hope, we whatever lucky talisman you have, you call upon it. And everybody knows there's no mystery here, there's no secrets, everybody knows what this club needs, everybody has a rough idea of who this club is looking at. It's just a matter now of can they do the business. So
We can only hope and pray, eh?
on that ambivalent note, we bid all of you adieu. We hope to come back next week and with Ryan, a full pod, Ryan, and some good names to show you. Maybe Sam will already have his new top. I
We'll
hope.
see.
Maybe I have one myself. So, but again, even my dogs are barking for Arsenal. All right. So again, we're on an ambivalent note. We'll just say, okay, show us what you got to do. Show us what you got, Richard Garlic. Show you what you got, KSE. Show us what you got, Arsenal. We're here. We'll be back. Hope you come back, and we all have good things to talk about. For Sam, I'm Raphael, and for Ryan, wherever Ryan is off in the ether, we bid you a good night, and we will see you next Tuesday.